It starts with a little momentum, a small win, a bigger triumph, gaining strength with every motion, growing trust with every turn. For over 80 years, we've kept you moving. From pros and student athletes to weekend warriors, advancing care through all life stages, propelling tomorrow forward. Choose care closer to you. Choose Orlando Health Jewett Orthopedic Institute.
Hello, Full Sailors. Welcome to the Orlando Health Fortress. Thank you guys so much for being here today. My name is Katrina Green, and I'm part of your Alumni Relations team. I'm super excited to introduce you to our game industry panelists that are here today. We are going to take this time to talk a little bit about the game industry through the years, in particular, a slice of about a decade, and then afterwards we will have a closed discussion QA that will be off camera, so be sure to stick around for that. First up, I'm going to bring up the man who actually put this panel together. He is a Full Sail grad from 2 degree programs, both the entertainment business and the game design master's degree. He currently works for the global game development company Virtuos, where he serves as a senior account manager for mobile and AAA game titles across North America. His body of work includes roles with companies such as Telltale Games, Cubic Corporation, Steamroller Studios, and EA. His growing list of credits includes work on Smite, Star Wars Jedi Survivor, Mortal Kombat 1 and 2, Madden 20 and 21, and Moonbreaker. Please say hello to Virtuos Game Senior Account Manager, Matthew Schulz. Welcome, Matthew. Our next panelist, since graduation, has gone to work at both EA and Steamroller Studios to lend his skills to the creation of games like The Sims, Anthem, Madden 21 and 22. He currently works remotely at PlayStation Studios Virtual Arts, where his contributions can be found in titles such as The Last of Us, Part 1 and 2, Uncharted, Lost Legacy, and more. Please welcome 2015 Computer Animation Bachelor's Graduate and Senior Animator at PlayStation Studio Visual Arts, Zach Gillespie. Thank you so much, Zach. This next guest's game education and career began in his home country of Australia, where he graduated from Queensland's University of Technology with a bachelor and an honors degree in fine arts and animation with a minor in game design. After graduation, he worked at Defiant Development Game Studio in Australia on Hands of Fate 2, before making the leap to California to work for Telltale Games on the Batman series. Since then, he has worked as an art director for Concept Art House, which is now known as Concept Labs, and today he can be found at Redemption Games as an art director for mobile game titles. Please give a very warm Full Sail welcome to Redemption Games art director RJ Keates. Thank you so much, RJ. So we have some established alumni industry pros as well as game industry talent from all over the world. So it's an international panel. I love it. And thank you so much to Matt and to Carlos Lugo for putting this all together, kind of last minute. Really appreciate you, Matt, for bringing this forward.
Yeah, no worries. I love bringing things together at the very last minute, in a rush, if you will.
It really keeps us on our toes. I really appreciate that. And I really appreciate, actually, you and Zach both, because these guys are continuously returning. You've probably seen their names on Full Sail 1, coming to classrooms to visit, to do project reviews. And Matt does quite a bit of hiring, so you'll probably see him at a lot of the hiring events as well. So before we get started with our look at game industry over the years, I'd love for these guys to go down the line and tell you a little bit about what they currently do so that you understand some of the different roles in the game industry. Matt, would you mind kicking us off?
Yeah, sure thing. Matt Schulz. I'm account manager, or senior account manager at Virtuos Games. It's basically like a project manager type role. I came from the industry before this, as Kat mentioned, that I was a producer and things like that, so it's essentially the same thing. Greasing the wheels, making sure the projects are moving, and these guys are kept in check, so yeah.
And you are always on the lookout for new talent, correct?
Yeah, and actually, hot off the press last night, just announced, we opened up Virtuos Tokyo, so if you have any Japanese folks in here, or people willing to move to Japan, we just kicked that off last night, so looking for folks.
I love it. And stay tuned. At the end of this conversation, we'll be asking for their key tips as people that hire for their teams on what you guys should be doing to prepare. Zach, could you share a little bit about your world?
Hi, everybody. So I'm a senior animator at PlayStation Visual Arts. They're based out of San Diego. So we work on pretty much anything that PlayStation works on. My role is we will get data back from our mocap studios, from the different studios like Insomniac or Naughty Dog, and we'll clean that up. So mocap is great, but it's never perfectly polished for the screen. So we'll go through and work on hand polish. Any sort of object interaction doesn't exist, so we have to kind of add that in. And I've been doing it for 8 years now. It's pretty sweet.
Thank you so much. RJ, give us a glimpse into your world.
Yeah, so I work as an art director. So the role of an art director is essentially you determine the look of a project and then you're managing the team to execute it. Art directors can come from any kind of background within the art. So usually people will start with a very specific role, like a character artist, environment artist concept. But as you learn and develop and rise the ranks, you can eventually become an art director. But as you do, you need to have a much broader understanding, because when you become art director, you're in charge of it in a broad sense. So you need to have more general experience, even though you're coming from a background that is somewhat more specific. So I was a character artist and then climbed the ranks to senior and lead and such. And so now that I'm an art director, I generally look for projects that are more character focused.
Awesome. Thank you guys for sharing a little bit about that. We want to take a look at what the industry was like. So go back in time a little bit to when you guys were first getting into the industry around 2015. So much has changed, even just with COVID in the last couple of years. Can you guys share with us maybe what the biggest changes have been from back then to today?
Yeah, sure. When a publisher and a game developer love each other very much, they want to make a game, right? No, the one major difference is obviously the work from home situation. So there's a lot of studios nowadays that are moving to a hybrid model, like Montreal, Ubisoft Montreal, for instance. They just went back to a 3-day work week in office and then 2 days out. Same with EA. Right before we left, they went back to the hybrid model. So we're seeing a lot of the pros and cons of working remote, obviously from COVID and things like that. And with Virtuos, we have about 20 studios worldwide. We noticed that a lot of our Asian studios, now Tokyo, but Seoul and Chengdu, Shanghai, Sparks in Vietnam, they all need to work in-house. The internet and the work-life balance just isn't as great over there as it is here or in Europe. So we're seeing a lot of interesting challenges internationally even that came from COVID. But the harder challenges I'm seeing, especially with the youths or the entry-level folks coming in, is they don't get the support that they need, right? If all your seniors, your leads, your art directors, I guess kind of like us here, are all remote, they're not going to get the support that they need or that we got when we first entered the industry. So definitely something to be looking out for. If you guys want to piggyback off of...
Yeah, I'll also say that in general, something that used to be the norm back then was the fact that we'd have a lot more artists in-house. And I don't just mean like people working remotely, like working for the studio. We would often have a team of like, say, 5 or 10 character artists. And now the dynamic has shifted where you will usually just have an art director or lead artist or some senior staff, and then everybody else is outsourced studios. So that's definitely become the norm now that companies are streamlining and trying to keep like a handful of senior staff, and then everything else is outsourced. That's pretty common. It's just the fact.
Yeah, I mean, just the past 3 years since I've been at Virtuos, we went from 1,500 and we're now about 3,700. So it's a little over 2,000 in 3 years, which is insane. And that came from acquisitions and like, home growing our own studios and things like that. But the external development community has exploded in the past few years.
Yeah, I will piggyback off of what they're saying. I think there's a lot of differences and a lot of similarities to when we graduated. I think we, in 2015, also entered a similar market. There wasn't nearly as many jobs as there were during COVID with the remote. It just seemed like games blew up. Everybody was at home. Everybody wanted to play games. And so now we're kind of finding this restructuring where that hybrid is now coming into full effect. And I could definitely... There's pros and cons, like RJ was saying, where it's nice it was great to come out into the industry and be able to go in and have the support right off the bat. But now we're still trying to kind of find that solution now. But I'm a big proponent of in studio, especially as younger artists. There's just nothing like being able to have support right at your fingertips where people can come over and help. The techniques I learned in a short amount of time are immeasurable. There it is.
Invaluable. That's the
Oh,
word.
thank you. Thank you.
Love how you guys complete each other.
Sentences.
Sentences. That actually brings me, I'm going to skip ahead to one of your other questions about the learning curve when you first get in, because being remote, I know that had to have impact, like you said, fresh people coming in, not being able to ask someone that's sitting next to them. If you guys could talk a little bit about when you first got your positions, what that learning curve was like, and what do you think were the key attributes that helped you be successful in your roles?
Yeah, I think being here at Full Sail is huge. That interaction with people that have knowledge, that learning on site was humongous for once I got my first job. The learning curve is always going to be there. Companies have their proprietary softwares and things like that, workflows you've never seen before. But being able to interact with people and knowing how to ask questions and knowing that it's okay that you don't know, because that's the knowledge of everyone that's in the industry, is that you're learning and you need to catch up as quick as possible. So I think that's a big trait, is just having patience, knowing that it's okay to fail because it's expected. And just the biggest thing is that you need to move forward, learn from your mistakes, and continue to get better. So.
Yeah. Adding to that, one of the things that I would say is you always hear like learn on the job and things like that. But I find that when you go into a job, particularly like one that you're starting off with, you're never really taught by the company. Like, it's very much a self-driven thing, and I think that is something that people need learn. If you are trying to learn on the job, it's definitely self-driven. It's definitely going home and working things. If you don't know a program, they're not really going to teach you. I mean, there may a little bit, half an hour here and there, but it's not like a course. It's not like university. It's definitely, get a crash course and then it's up to you to do it. And there's not much hand-holding in that context.
Lots of wiki pages to read that you're like, wait,
Yeah.
I think I know how this works? Yeah.
And doing it at home and doing it on the job and doing your own research, that's something that's not told, I guess.
But at Full Sail, and something I hear time and time again when we bring graduates back, is that you guys learn how to learn. So that when you do get into those positions out in the industry, you know how to ramp up and do the self-taught that RJ was just referring to. Would you agree with that statement?
I was going to add on to that, where a big step forward I had when I got in was I understood, as an animator, I understood rigging, I understood modeling, and all of these other concepts because of my computer animation course here, where there are some animators that'll come in that have been in kind of crash course online programs. They're really good animators, but anytime they hit a problem, they have no idea what to do. They raise their hand. They're looking for a tech artist immediately. So what's great about here is you guys are all proven problem solvers at this point, and it continues on. The people I appreciate working with the most are the ones that will try for 15 minutes and was like, I did X, Y, Z, that didn't work, and then they'll be like, but I know I have to stop now because now I'm just wasting time. Do you know what's the matter here? I feel like we gain those skills by coming here.
Yeah, I'd also say that when I left university, I definitely had like holes in my knowledge of 3D, and I was just like, oh, I'll just like kind of like figure that out as I go, and I didn't. And I still have some of those same holes, and I think it's just speaking to that fact that like it's really up to you to, you know, make that work and make that change and learn. Yeah. Yeah,
and one key skill for me was learning how to raise your hand. Right, there's going to be times where you're not going to know a thing, and I got burned real bad early on in my career. Zach knows this. So it was figuring out what I don't know and when to go find that tech artist, or for me, go cry to my executive producer because I'm in big trouble. Definitely something I didn't quite pick up in school. You know, who do you go to? You know, your teacher when things go awry, or you know, a fellow classmate, or someone, you know, a couple months ahead of you. So, you know, learning that skill is important too, because again, you're coming into an industry that's hybrid or remote. How are you going to do that, you know, electronically? Are you going to just email them, call them up on Zoom, or go fly out to them, right? Like, what's the approach here? So, highly recommend learning what you don't know and how to figure out what you don't know quick.
And that's even applicable, like, even way down the line. Like, even like as an art director, you're in charge of all aspects of the art, but you're never really going to be a master of everything. So you need to find the people that are and lean on them, and like, you don't have to do everything. You just need to get the right people to do the right thing. And yeah.
I thought you knew everything though.
Huh?
You're not a master of all art?
Soon. I'm gonna level up.
Yeah, okay.
And that's so what key about what you guys are doing now. I mean, kudos to you guys both at home, tuning in, as well as in the audience. You're hopefully in the audience, you've networked with the people before we started this and afterwards, classmates that are focused on another area, like maybe you're modeling someone else's texture, you have a friend that develops, having that circle of people that you can call on for their expert. You don't have to know everything, like RJ says. You've always got a friend that's just a phone call away. So hopefully you'll continue to come to these events and expand that network so that you have that lifeline going by the time you graduate. So speaking of the top skills or habits, mindsets, can you guys share with us, you know, your perspective on what it takes to be successful in this industry? It's a very fast-paced industry, a lot of feedback that you have to receive well, a lot of, sometimes even your games aren't received well. Could you talk a little bit more about that mindset?
I think one of the things in art, at least, is not being too attached. There is something that a lot of people do, particularly when they start, where they're creating a piece of work and it's like their baby and they're putting like everything into it and their passion and they're so attached, and then somebody comes and says, oh, we're just changing all this. Or even if it's a small change, and people can really struggle with that, you really have to associate like work as work and treat it as such and do the best thing you can, but it's not about you, it's about working as the greater team. And that's why almost every single artist will go home and have their own passion projects where it's only theirs and it can be as unique and beautiful as you want, but when you're in the office, you're there to work as a team. And I think that is something that people need to get used to. It's kind of like you really need to align with the vision of the project and other people. It's not about you. Although you can, you know, still use your eye to make it the best it can be and know when to push against feedback and knowing when it's like, hey, this is not a personal thing.
Yeah, it's definitely a big deal, especially being in an art-driven industry. You're going to have opinions that you may not necessarily agree with, but having that understanding that it's for their project, not necessarily for you, is huge. And you always need to do it with a smile on your face. You know, sometimes it's hard to take feedback that's negative, especially if you've put time into, you know, a shot like I have, and then it's like you did it completely opposite of what we said. You got to the end result, but the in-between's opposite. Scrap it, start over. It's hard to take that feedback. So Just being able to be like, look, yeah, that was my bad. Sorry, now I understand it better. I can move forward is huge, and it's remembered. You know, this is a very small industry, even though there's so many different jobs. You just meet so many people very quickly once you're in, and people remember you. And it comes up again quick, whether in a positive or a negative light. So just always keep that in mind.
Everybody knows everybody, or once you work in the industry for a bit, you will know somebody at every studio or know somebody that knows them. There's always something. And speaking of which, you're never so talented that you can't be nice. Companies don't have time for divas. You can be amazing and hard to work with, and you won't be working that long. People would rather have someone that's mediocre and is diligent and easy to work with and comfortable than people that are problematic.
Yeah, and that's why I keep them coming back to you, RJ.
Yeah.
So,
it reins me in.
Yeah,
We
exactly.
used to.
Yeah, not anymore. But yeah, I mean, to piggyback off them, it's adaptability, right? They got to adapt to the feedback and things that they get from their supervisors, art directors, leads, and all that. But for me, it's we got large game projects. I got to go pitch to whoever. We're going to get rejected 9 out of 10, but that one time that doesn't get rejected, that's the thing we're gunning for, right? So on the project side, manager and producer side of things, it's how to adapt to the ever-changing landscape of the game. At Telltale, all the time they were trying to add new characters in. I remember the writers, which is a huge problem for us, right? Because they wanted to do the arcade nerdy guy, because someone knew him, and you're like, hell no. We don't have time or money for that thing. So, and that's where, I came in, and I was like, okay, we can, scrap these other characters to get this guy in here or something like that. So just being flexible, adapting to your surroundings, because it's going to change whether you like it or not.
Part of being able to be adaptable is having a great set of tools in your arsenal. So you guys each have very different jobs now. Could you share a little bit about those tools, whether it's for you maybe Jira or project management or the software? What are those main tools that you rely on day in and day out and throughout your career?
Yeah, so I have a lot less than these two over here when it comes to hard tools, but like Kat, you mentioned the Jira, the ShotGrid, the task track management tools are big. You got to need to know them if you want to get into any sort of production-related thing in movies, even games, software. You got to know it. What really put a leg up for me was being a Jira admin, so I knew how to script, do some minor programming in the back end for them, and that just got me the job at EA after an interview, which has never happened. So. Definitely learn those. Excel, learn how to write well or write good, but not speak it, because I can't. But yeah, good emails, know how to communicate electronically. I'm an emoji guy, and it sounds kind of weird, but emoji goes a long way. It goes from, hey, I don't like your art, it stinks, to, hey, I don't like your art, it stinks, winky face. Which one sounds better to y'all? So, it's that kind of stuff, though. On the hard side, though, like I said, it's, learn how to write emails and task tracking software. I use Salesforce now, a bunch of wicked boring stuff, but I'm sure they got some way more interesting tools.
I don't know about that. I'm an exclamation point guy. Keep it lighthearted. For the animation side, we literally use tools we learned here at school. So I primarily work in Maya. I've also done jobs that are motion builder. Perforce is a great one to learn, just for file management purposes. ShotGrid is another kind of online tool that we manage everything through. And yeah, lots of plugins. Just get used to learning quick new plugins all the time, because the company's like, look at this cool new thing. You're like, all right, cool.
Yeah, and that's one thing I'll back up to, is that you're not going to know certain things. Like Naughty Dog might have a plugin for tracking that no one here will ever use called Tasker. So unless you work there, you're not going to know about it. So just, be aware that there's going to be things you don't know. And it always looks good in the interview coming up from it too, saying, hey, I'm a student, and I've worked in Unreal 5, and I know you guys are using Frostbite. I know it's using C++ as a backing, but they're not quite the same thing. So just understanding your limitations based on where you're at, right?
Yeah, even if you don't know the tool that they're referencing, it's probably related to something else you've used in the past. So just listing everything that you have some experience in is always great. But definitely don't put anything you don't know how to use, because they're going to go, okay, cool, go ahead and use that. And you're like, nah, I have no idea. So it's not going to pan out well.
Yeah. All right, so programs for me, ZBrush, Maya, the Substance Suite, and Marmoset Toolbag. I particularly like Marmoset Toolbag because it's essentially like a game renderer, similar to Unreal, but just for like putting models in. And I use it for a lot of look dev. So rather than having to go like full engine stuff and spend hours doing it, in a couple minutes, I can get something that looks like a presentation render. And it's a way of getting things through approval at a much quicker rate, because I just don't like seeing completely gray ZBrush renders when I'm approving assets, because like ZBrush, it doesn't use correct lighting, and even Maya, if people are just using screenshots of it, it's not representative of how it would look like in a game. So getting it in a game engine, even if you're not putting it all the way into Unity or Unreal, it's a good way of getting things visualized in a way that is accurate to how it would be presented in the game in a very quick amount of time. So I really like using that, and I want to see more people doing that for fast approvals.
Yeah, and then I'll blanket all of us here by saying industry's heavily moving into an Unreal suite, so it's all Unreal 5. Some are lagging behind, still with Unreal 4, but Unreal 5 has become the major player in the game, at least on the AAA side that we've all been working in for years now. So I know this has become a more Unreal-focused program here, which is good, because, again, that's where we're leaning into. So happy to see the move.
Wonderful, and thank you guys for sharing those insight into the tools you use most in your work. You all are leaders at your studios. So could you tell us a little bit, as these guys are entering into the industry and becoming your team, what things do you really appreciate in the people that work for you, the extra steps that they can do that help them get noticed, help them get ahead, help the project go smoother?
Organization is key. I think when you're coming into this industry, being prompt and organized is humongous. I think we kind of hit on it before too, with just asking questions. We've looked at demo reels. We've talked to you. We understand the type of person you are. At that point, it is about proving yourself, but it's more so of adapting to the studio, because every studio is going to be different. So obviously, if you've gotten that far and you're at the studio, you need to stop kind of doubting yourself and like, have I done it? It's like, okay, you've done it. You've come this far. Like, now it's about how do you fit within the system, and just keeping on time with everything you're doing, getting along with people. It's all pretty basic stuff, really, for us.
Yeah, no, I mean, you best be keeping on time with your stuff, because then on the production side, then that's where I come in, the hammer. But yeah, it's like piggybacking off of Zach, it's exactly all that. Just eagerness, really, for me, or hunger. Like, we need to see that you're hungry, because at least for me, and I know these two fellas over here too, we don't have a ton of time sometimes to dedicate to training or anything like that. So we need you guys to be more, hey, Matt, hey, Zach, hey, RJ, what do you guys need? Can I help you out here or there? Like, I don't know this thing. I don't know how to model as a character artist, but you hired me, so shame on you, RJ. But it's just being eager and asking those questions. That's kind of what gave me the leg up, is being the sponge and soaking things up. That's where I learned my Jira backgrounds, because I didn't know nothing about it. And I was like, well, this seems interesting. And then, kind of helped me out years later. So who knows what asking those questions will get you. It could lead into all sorts of other different things.
Sorry, I was going to add one last thing. Being open to doing roles in your job that you didn't expect. I think a lot. I come from an animation background, so I figured, that's what I'm going to get a file, I'm going to animate it, and then that's going to be that. That's maybe 40 to 50% of my job. The rest of it is, getting things submitted. Maybe there's tech problems that need to be put in place. I do a lot of tech side stuff. So one thing sometimes you'll see with junior animators is working in mocap specifically, they want to blow away mocap data and hand key it themselves, and it's like, you can't do that. It's not going to look the way it needs to. So just being adaptable. It may be something where you're like, I don't think I want to do that. Just give it 2 or 3 weeks of trying it. I will say 9 times out of 10 that's happened in my career, I've been like, oh, actually, this is sweet, and I'm glad I took the time to do this.
Yeah, I don't really have much more to add on that in particular. I think you really nailed it in the sense of saying that like adapting to the way the company works is the key one if you're new, because being kind of like stuck in your ways, you can only really get away with it if you're like really senior and your work like speaks for itself. So in early stages, it's more about like making sure everything like fits in the right boxes and is organized. And
well, you're senior and your work speaks for itself. What are you trying to say?
So guys, it's kind of a scary time, right? Post-COVID, we've seen a lot of layoffs, some legendary studios close. What do you feel is the contributing factor or one of the most difficult challenges facing the game industry today?
Yeah, so I'll jump on that grenade real fast. It's almost a lack of middle management, if it makes sense. There's a lot of senior talent out there now, and there's a lot of projects to be going around. But we're seeing, at least for me and my studios across the world, we're seeing a mismatch in between the us, right, and then the 3, 4, 5 years middle ground folks that are there as I would say the backbone of the studio, there to also help, teach the juniors and the new entry-level, folks and all that. So I'm feeling we're missing that middle part, and we're also lacking positions for juniors and early adopters to the game industry, because during COVID we had the remote work and it exploded. But those, I feel, at least again for Virtuos, they might have been lacking on the training side early on. So we're trying to fill that gap by not only bringing people in, but we've also made a shift this year to bring our art directors around to other studios and do workshops, trainings, things like that. We really this year it's less of a growing year for us and more of like a solidifying the teams. And I've been seeing that happen around other studios worldwide, not just Virtuos, but other partners we work with. Yeah, just looking to help fill that gap and then get publishers and investors to release the money again, because that's kind of where the project side things are getting held up.
Yeah, I think like Matt said, I think there's a bit of an identity crisis in our industry of studios not knowing if they want to be fully remote studios or if they want to be in-house studios, right? So that kind of puts us at this crossroads now of there were a lot of us, I think all 3 of us were in roles that were in-house, and everyone immediately transitioned to remote. And I'm sure you guys see this across the board with jobs where there's a lot of people who don't want to go back. They're like, look, this is great. I like my life now. So it's creating this weird competition with the people looking for jobs and the companies themselves of trying to figure out how they want to restructure. And companies, as I don't know more of a plain way to say it, of them kind of stepping in now and being like, look, we're an in-house studio. You're going to have to move here if you want to work. We like this style better, which has created this void of a lot of budgets being shrunk. People are unsure of longevity projections with projects. I mean, these games take 5, 6, 7 years to create, and I feel like we've probably been in a full year of companies not being sure or not being ready to say, look, we want to do it this way. So it's created a hard time for you guys with juniors and looking at those roles. But what I am starting to see is kind of some of those sprouts coming back of, I was just on LinkedIn today and saw Insomniacs looking for interns. I think the intern pool is picking back up, which I think shows that the junior pool is probably coming back too. Matt and I kind of talk about this all the time, where it's like every month it's like, okay, in a month or 2, jobs are going to open up, projects are going to start, and then it gets kicked. The can keeps getting kicked down the road. But I'm starting to see signs I didn't see before that I think there's hope on the horizon for this stuff.
Yeah, and we see the studio closures or the project closures left and right this year. I mean, look at BioWare, Volition earlier this year with the Apex Mobile and all them, and Industrial Toys. It feels like it's never ending, but I'll put this out here for y'all. It's never a bad time to start applying, right? I mean, I applied to Telltale, and in 5 to 6 months, we got the can. So, you know, I didn't learn back then, and, you know, I certainly don't advise y'all to, you know, be scared of, you know, getting out there, because you never know. Again, it's all situational.
Yeah. One thing that I think I've seen a lot that sinks ships, like something that I've seen happen the most is, this usually applies to middle-sized companies and small, but sometimes big companies, but a company will have a hit, and then they will scale up the company like 3 or 4 times the size for that game. They'll then try to make like a sequel or multiple games, and the multiple games with 3 or 4 times the people, 3 or 4 times the budget, doesn't make the same money of that first project with a quarter of the team. And then they kind of keep doing that, and usually the first game made so much money that they're able to last for like 10 years, but it's this like slow decline and increasing cost of the company, and eventually they just run it until it just dies. And I've seen that happen over and over and over. And yeah, like games in general are a real gamble when it comes to like the business side of it, because even the cheapest games cost like millions of dollars, unless it's like 2 people, you know, doing it for free for 4 years. So it's always been a gamble, and when it pays off, I think people like really need to be careful with how they like, you know, the next steps. And the companies that I have the most respect for are the ones that are those middle-sized companies that make a hit, and then they acknowledge it, and they kind of make sequels, but they keep it relative the same size, and they're just able to keep working, and then they will have like more money than they know what to do with. And I've talked to some of these companies, they will literally tell you that like, we have more money than we know what to do with. We're just deciding what to do with our time.
Yeah, I wanted to add in at the very end of this too that I was kind of saying how it's similar and different right now. I think the big thing for you guys graduating now is these companies that are now saying we want on-location jobs. There's a lot of people who don't want to do that. So if you're willing to relocate, if you're willing, you know, Matt and I both moved out to California for our first jobs in the industry. RJ, I think you came to the U.S. to work too. So there's now that shift, and that puts you a leg ahead of everyone else. That they go, can you relocate? And you go, yep. It's going to put you a step ahead, because a lot of people are like, I just want to sit at my house and work remotely. So it's a big, and it's beneficial for the learning curve too, because you'll level up as an artist very quickly.
Yeah.
So
We're also old and lazy now.
Yeah. Anyone want to go to Vietnam, China, Tokyo? No? Yeah.
Global gaming company here,
Anyone?
so
All right.
definitely make sure you talk with him about this in the next session. Thank you guys so much, especially for identifying trends in the industry. RJ, that was a great segue into, guys, the future. Let's look a little bit into the future. What do you see, or can you forecast a little bit about trends that you see coming up in the gaming industry?
AI, it's coming.
It's coming for all our jobs.
But seriously, it is. And I think that particularly artists need to train their art direction skills, because what you're doing when you're working with AI, if people have messed around with Midjourney and the concept ones, they're only going to get better. So it's more about having like a really strong vision that you're able to communicate. And when you are like telling an AI like what kind of concept art or something you want it to generate, you are using, the way you're describing things is similar to art direction. So it is more about having that vision and pushing it through. I remember watching like an interview with like a film director, and he said, you don't have to have any of the skills. You just need to have the vision to tell everybody else what to do and to get it made. And that is effectively the way I see things going. It's going to be less, you're going to be building on top of established technology more and more and more, and not building stuff from scratch. Like what's happening with the Unreal MetaHuman, there's not really going to be a reason to be building like a realistic human from scratch. You're going to have like a preset that you're just dressing with clothes and using these deformers, because they've put so many like thousands and thousands of hours into this that you, like most companies aren't going to have the resources to make something comparable to the template that is already there. I mean, the top ones will, like, you know, Sony Santa Monica and Naughty Dog and such, but like almost everybody else won't be competing with that. So I think it is going to be learning to move with the emerging technology, and then also those other skills and vision.
Yeah, I'm going to piggyback a little bit here. I think the future is really showing that, I'm no longer a gameplay animator or a movie animator. It's animation across the board. When I graduated, you kind of were like, well, I want to be in games, I want to be in movies, I want to do X, Y, Z. It's all starting to blend now where you see people move within the company and do all of it. So I think the biggest thing future-wise is don't limit yourself, don't catty corner yourself into a specific role. I think there's a lot of freedom opening up in what we do because the technologies are starting to merge. You see Unreal going into television, and you see there's like the I can't even think of the shorts on Netflix, but that are all built in game engines, and so there's just a lot of cross-platform stuff.
Love, Death, and Robots?
Yes, Love, Death, and Robots. Thank you.
That's why I'm here. I only know random facts. Now, and for me, the trends, like on a global scale, so outside of production-related things, it's like Virtuos or the game industry itself related. The trends are like learning like tool stacks, learning the Unreal, learning all the free things that you can do right now online with a bunch of tutorials and stuff like that. So that's definitely one thing I see. The AI is just it's just another tool. Like, it's not anything to replace jobs or anything. It's going to augment jobs, I'd say. Well, you might know more, but it might.
The teams are going to be smaller.
Yeah.
It's not replacing the job per se, but you're going to have less people on it. I think that there's going to be a lot more indie projects of a lot higher quality coming out.
Yeah.
Because you're going to have the resources to make AAA. Like, look at Unreal. You can make a AAA-looking project with a handful of people. It's just a matter of, people push that all the way through production.
Yeah, and then to the business point of it, I'm seeing a lot more, say, mid-level studios built by AAA talent. Some, thinking Thought Pennies, That's No Moon, as a couple, for instance. They're smaller studios. They're 70, I think they're around 60, 70-ish, under 100 usually. And then they augment their teams with me's, with virtuoses or keywords or something like that. So we're seeing a lot more of that, whereas, if you're working at That's No Moon, you have an animation team, you have an animation supervisor and a lead, and then use our team at Sparks to augment the team with 5, 6, 7, 8 animators, and you just work remote with them. So we're seeing, again, an explosion in that, obviously, with us at Virtuos having 2,000 more people than we did 2 years ago, is a big industry trend going on. And it's not just Virtuos, us, globally. There's just plenty of studios here in the States that do these things or specialize in things. RG, you might know the studio that specializes in hair out of London. I can't remember the name, but they essentially just cornered the market in hair. So they just do hair all day, every day on all the games. And then, certain other companies specialize in different things. So, could be an interesting route to take. Instead of going to the Respawn or the Naughty Dog, you go to, again, I forget the studio, but you go to Hair Inc., and then you just work on all the hair for Naughty Dog in Santa Monica later on. So something to look out for sure. Not necessarily hitting the big major players now and seeing if they got positions open, but looking at their supporting studios and seeing what they got. It's a little more homework on your end, but I think it's totally worthwhile.
Speaking to that, it is also worth pointing out that some of the more obscure roles are often the most sought after. So everybody wants to be a character artist or a concept artist or an environment artist and stuff, but a lot of the time, like VFX, rigging, things like the hair are, you can have full-time work, around, like, permanently.
Oh, yeah.
And get it a lot easier and get into higher positions easier by picking the roles that are just a little less competitive.
Oh, yeah. No, our VFX artists are booked out for 6, 7 months at this point, continuously. So we always got VFX needs.
That is such great industry insider advice. I hope you guys are taking note of that. To piggyback off of that, what do you guys, if you were looking into the audience telling yourself today, coming out of school,
Run.
what you should do to put yourself ahead of the pack, to set yourself head and shoulders above the competition? What would each of you go down the line and recommend?
One of the things that I would say is, what we've said a lot here is that a lot of studios are made up of senior staff, and it is tricky to get in at that base level. Like the first couple of years are a bit of a grind, but once you get going and you start to get a reputation, you make more contacts, it really does get a lot easier. But when I talk about senior staff and leads and things like that, those roles aren't just handed out like after you've done a certain amount of time. Like technically, if you've done a certain amount of years, you qualify for things. But realistically, it's skill and the quality of the work. So if you're like a driven enough person, you can climb ranks quickly. It is about drive and kind of like what we're saying about learning to learn, all that. Like the more you put yourself out there and you really deliver the quality, you can climb so much higher and faster. It's not just putting in years. It's learning the skills and executing. So if people can like pull off personal projects, which is very difficult when someone has full-time jobs, but there are certain ways to promote yourself. Something else when it comes to promotion, I don't know if it's necessarily a good thing, but it's often easier to get promoted by leaving a company and going to another company that will promote you than it is to get the internal company to promote you, because a lot of the time they're not incentivized. They're like, well, we already have you and you're doing great stuff. Why do we want to suddenly pay you more? Whereas another company says, hey, we've seen your stuff. You look good. We'll pay you more to come here. So, yeah.
Yeah, I was... to add to that, so you've been given such a great foundation here at Full Sail of understanding the tools, and it's always this jumping point forward, right, to learn what these students are doing. The paywall now that you're out of free content, you can now continue to learn and learn all of these different things like Unreal Engine and VFX and all of that stuff is now available to you. So continuing to show that stuff is humongous. Your portfolio, at least in my industry, is massive. I mean, that's your face, right? That's what's going to show to your employer. So putting a little bit of your personality in that is always good, but also showing innovation is great too, right? I know way back when I graduated, there was a lot of the 3D art that had the flat 2D look to it. It was kind of, shows were starting to show it. So I found a way with my demo reel to have that kind of appeal to it. And it looked cool. It didn't really change much, and it didn't change the timing of anything for me, but it had that appeal of what people were looking for in the industry. So if there is something you're looking to do, like you really enjoy and that you're passionate about, I would definitely do that. But I think we continue to harp back to Unreal Engine. If I was in your seat right now, I would find some way to use that as a tool, because there's so much quick quality within that to make your stuff look right next to industry stuff compared to student work coming out from other places that doesn't have that extra appeal to it.
Yeah, well, luckily in production, we don't have anything portfolio-wise, so you just have to talk smart, which is why I don't understand why I'm here today. But yeah, if it was up to me, sitting there in the corner, because I'm not going to sit in the front, it's too awkward. Let me see. I got to put some thought into this one. It's going to get deep. Yeah, I would say, just know what your priorities are, right? Coming out, I just wanted to be that game developer that went to California, worked at the game studio and then hit the beach on the weekends. Didn't quite turn out that way, as me and RJ know and found out years past. But it's kind of what your priorities are. Why are you doing this thing? The why. There's that one business guy who always threw out that, not what your job is, but why your job. Like, why do you want to do the thing? What brought you here in the first place? Was it your love of games? Was it your love of, I don't know what you do in Australia. I don't know what you guys love out there. Your love of koalas that got you in. But it's, like for me, it was always, the love of the play, like finding the fun and, chasing it. So, life in the game industry is going to throw a lot of curveballs at you. So, just be prepared for that as best you can, and you're not going to be ready for it. It's just going to happen.
Yeah, I think.
But in good ways too. It's not all bleak.
Yeah, we all, we made sacrifices to be here, and sadly, those sacrifices will continue in this first role, right? Like it's how bad you want it, and that first game job means so much. And it's going to seem like a lot now, but when you look back at it, you're like, I had to do that. That was what made it happen. So maybe it is moving halfway across the country. I left my girlfriend, now wife, here in Florida. We were long distance for 2 years so that I could go work out there. She supported my dream, and now I'm back here in Orlando. So it all kind of works out in the end. It's kind of a tough pill to swallow, but you've been given such great resources, and now it's that chance. Now you kind of have to take that leap of faith. So.
Yeah, and there's nothing like being poor, living out of someone's garage in Northern California, eating ramen. That just really hits home for you.
Yeah, but also I think the crazy thing is you can expect layoffs and you can expect things to rise and fall. It's just the nature of it. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't stop. Games are gonna last. They're gonna be around. So. Whenever things fall, it just means that there's something new that's going to pop up soon. So, and the skills that we establish, just working in the technology field, it's always evolving. So there's always going to be, it's a pretty stable, even if the job itself isn't stable, it's a stable industry. So I think that's positive.
Sorry, one last thing. Don't be afraid to take jobs that are adjacent to the job you want. I wanted to work at EA here in Orlando. I worked in QA for a year and a half. I met a lot of important people. I left and went back to California to work on Last of Us, and then came back here and worked on Madden because of somebody I had met working in QA. So just because you're taking that job doesn't mean you're changing anything in your trajectory. Yeah. So always remember that. It's about the long term and what you're trying to get to, and not so much the, I didn't get into Blizzard the first time I applied. I guess I'm not good enough. It's no, just keep working.
You should probably avoid janitorial roles though. So that doesn't get you anywhere.
Speaking to Zach's point, I think there is something associated there with portfolios. Kind of goes without saying, but create work to for the kind of company that you want to work at. So if you want to work at Blizzard, create something that looks exactly like it would go in the game. Not just visually, but functionally. So the low poly, textures, UVs, all of it should be set up as though it was an asset that could be dropped right into that game. And if that doesn't, even if you don't get that Blizzard job, whenever you have a company that's really sought after, there are so many companies that are copying that art style or trying to capture that, thousands. So you might not get the Blizzard job, but you will probably get approached by a company that is trying to emulate that same style and values what you're doing. So it's not wasted work. Something that I used to do every time I would apply to jobs when I was starting off is I would look at the company I wanted to work for, and I would specifically make an asset based on their work and put it out there. And I got interviews almost every time.
You also have awesome people like Katrina who work in career development. You have a lifelong lifeline to lean back to, so not taking advantage of that is a huge mistake as well. They helped me a ton right out of school as well. So.
Thank you guys so much. This has been incredible advice, right guys?
Yeah, it's been all right.
And it will continue. Right now, we are going to thank the audience that's tuning in remotely for being here and let them know that the questions that you asked in the chat, some of those will be asked in the QA section that's going to be closed. We're going to close out the Zoom now. The video will be posted later, so you might find your answers in that QA chat. And if not, if these guys at home would like to follow up with you guys, LinkedIn, is there another way that they can reach out to you?
Yeah, LinkedIn's usually the go-to for us in the industry. With Zach, I'll give you his personal phone number and email.
Right. Yeah,
so you can make it real weird. But
just not my address, that's fine. No, LinkedIn's great. Yeah, find me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to talk. So.
Yeah, I'm going to get a homing pigeon.
You're never telling where in the world you're going to be, so we'll send a homing pigeon your way. Again, thank you again, everyone that is tuning in from Zoom, and everyone in the audience. Please stay put. We're going to start the QA in just a few moments. Stream?